And blessed to be a part of your day. Kevin Miller in the morning here. Phone number is 580-5436. 580-KIDO. We hope you enjoyed our tribute to D-Day and certainly the difference between America back in the day and America today. The idea of sacrifice, the idea of commitment, and of course there weren't ideas. They were reality. We liberated the world. And the danger that we live in today in the politically correct Politburo world that we live in is this issue involving, how should I put this, that the educators and others, and not all educators, tend to focus on the negative, tend to focus on the bad things about America. You know, I've been talking about this movie, what is it, Spider-Man Homecoming, one of the biggest movies ever, right? One of the biggest movies ever. And what happened? You have one girl who said, look, I don't want to go up to the Washington Monument because it's a tribute to slavery. It was built by slaves. Are you crazy? That is just insane, the world we live in today. Phone numbers here, 580-5436, 580-KIDO. Some things going on with China. Let's take a look at it from our own Rachel Sutherland.
More U.S. diplomats suffered concussion-like symptoms in Guangzhou, China, similar to those experienced by a diplomat there last month, and to a string of so-called sonic attacks in Cuba. The workers have been brought back to the U.S. for medical testing. American officials have been trying to determine the source of the attacks, which have caused nausea, cognitive issues, and hearing loss. The New York Times reports the U.S. government is exploring the possibility some other nation than Cuba is responsible, possibly Russia or China. In Washington, Rachel Sutherland, Fox News.
More on that in a minute. Let's go live to Washington, D.C. from the RNC. Kayleigh McEnany joining us now. Kayleigh, good morning.
Hi, great to join you.
You know, we're a big fan of yours. In fact, when we have Cassie on, I mistaken her for you. So we see you on the TV all the time. So thanks for joining us this morning.
Well, that's great. Thanks so much for having me. I'm a big fan of Idaho. I've actually been out there for 2 or 3 New Years, so I've had a great time out in your state.
Well, thank you. Before we get to some of the big issues, what's it like when you have to face some heated opposition? You've got the lights, you've got the camera going on, because you've been out in front, whether it's on radio or national television, for quite some time. How difficult is it to get your point across when you have not only an adversary to your left, literally, but an adversarial press person? So it's almost like whatever you do, it's always 2-on-1.
Exactly. And on those CNN panels I did throughout the election, it was more like 8-on-1 because they would stack those panels with however many number of people, and plus the host was very adversarial too. And it was a challenge for sure, mainly because the topics they picked were always picked in a way as to impugn the president, or at that time nominee Donald Trump. And it was tough, to break through that and to try to get to substantive issues like the economy, federal judgeships, any number of issues, trade. So that definitely was pretty tough, especially when you're being cut off constantly.
Right. Kayleigh, that's enough. But I said three words. Yep, that's enough out of you.
Yep, exactly.
It's frustrating, but you do it with a smile, and we just so appreciate it.
Well, thank you. Yeah, it's you're giving me some flashbacks there, some bad deja vu with that cutoff.
Well, it is a different world from the campaign, but it seems like it hasn't stopped. Sarah Huckabee Sanders last night on with Cuomo Primetime, and it was strange, and we see this with the press. They continue to try to lecture not only you, but President Trump and other truth tellers about how to act and how to behave, and it was strange. I've never seen the press actually try to be the boss of the chief of state and then try and, give a lecture to the press secretary about ethics.
That's right. I did see about probably half that interview. Those CNN interviews sometimes go about 45 minutes, which I don't understand. But Sarah Sanders, she held her head up high, despite Chris Cuomo, as you said, lecturing her, asking the same question in about 30 different ways. And poor Sarah, she's sitting there just giving the same response with such dignity and grace and class. And she's so good at her job. And last night, Chris Cuomo, I feel bad for her having to deal with all those reporters and then go into the bowels of Cuomo Primetime.
Indeed. So let's talk about the blue wave. What happened during primary Tuesday? Anything big?
Yeah, there was actually something that's very big and underreported, and I was so glad that the president sent out a tweet to highlight it. He said the fake news media will not report the extraordinary number of voters who turned out, and I'm paraphrasing here, and he's right. We looked over at the RNC out at California, which is a very important state for us because we have 7 vulnerable congressional seats there. And in those 7 vulnerable seats, 6 of the 7, and they're all Republican held, turnout outpaced the Democrats by an average of 10.9%, 10.6%. And that's pretty big in a state like California. And if we can hold on to, 6 or 7 vulnerable seats in California, I think that says nationwide we're in a pretty good spot, and that enthusiasm for Republicans is growing.
Hey, let's talk a little bit about California, because we have a lot of folks from California that have moved here, and you've got folks there saying that all is lost, but some pretty good signs out of California.
Pretty good signs. That's right. We were expecting to get locked out of the gubernatorial race. What I mean by locked out is they have a top 2 vote getter system. So the top 2 individuals with the most votes advance doesn't have to be at one Republican and one Democrat. So we were anticipating for a long time, it looked like 2 Democrats would compete for the governorship of California. But in fact, one Republican advanced, John Cox. That was exciting. And I've been to the turnout in those 7 districts. And also overall, statewide in California, if you compare 2016 turnout to now, we matched 68% of our 2016 turnout. Democrats only matched 48% of theirs. So there really is enthusiasm, and I think you're seeing a rebellion against the sanctuary state policies of California.
Well, that is reassuring, and apparently some of at least the House candidates are out of cash. But here's the other thing. You have, what is it, Senator Feinstein? She's, 84, and she's running for re-election?
That's right. She's pretty old to be running for re-election, but, nevertheless, she is running, and she will have an opponent, a Democratic opponent named Kevin De Leon. He was the author, actually, of the sanctuary state legislation. So you basically have a radical leftist versus a so-called moderate Democrat. I wouldn't call her moderate, but that's what they call her, who is really out of touch with voters, and especially the young people out there, millennials, who are now becoming a big part and a big piece of the electoral prospects, the electoral map.
Indeed. Let's talk a little bit about women, ladies, females running in the Republican Party. We get vilified for this all the time, but if you take a look at the Trump administration, you take a look at the Bush administration, and you take a look at what's going on now, you have a lot of young ladies, you have a lot of females that are running for office, that are getting these nominations, that are really aiding and strengthening the GOP.
You do. In fact, we have doubled the number of female candidates running this time around as opposed to 2 years ago. So we're excited about that. We took it from 48 to 103 women running. And there were some victories last night. We saw young Kim win to South Korean immigrants out in California. Also, Diane Harkey, she's also in California. Then Kristi Noem in South Dakota could become the first female governor of South Dakota. So we do have some great women running, and we like to tout that, and it's a good thing when you have more women in politics. It is, but they have to be the right kind of women, not the Hillary Clinton kind.
I'm with you on that. Let's get back to what happened last week. You had Roseanne. Now apparently Samantha Bee has apologized, but just the visceral attacks, the gutter attacks, and what a lot of people don't know, and Kaylee, you're familiar with this, you go on national TV, you go on Twitter, and what the press doesn't report are the mean, vicious attacks against you personally for just having an opinion contrary to the libs.
That's right. You do get an onslaught of attacks, many of them sexist, many of them which are comments on your looks, and that's just, I guess, part of being a female in the limelight. And conservative women in particular, I think, get it the worst. And we've seen it with Ivanka Trump, those horrible words used by Samantha Bee, and she basically walked away with impunity there, keeping her show. Sarah Sanders has been the subject of a litany of attacks from Michelle Wolf and others, from Jim Carrey, another example. There's just this rabid anger and hatred towards any woman who happens to be conservative. And it's unfortunate, and it should end, but it won't end until Hollywood and the liberals and the elites call out this double standard, which I don't anticipate happening any day soon.
Indeed. What do you make of the president next week, a big week with the leader of North Korea? They begrudgingly report that.
They do, and it's a historic week. They begrudgingly report it because we are at a place where Kim Jong-un is agreeing to a meeting. He's not demanding sanctions relief. We're giving up nothing in return, but the North Koreans have given up a lot. The release of 3 American hostages, the destruction of a nuclear site, in a meeting where they're actually talking about denuclearization. So it's exciting, and it's definitely exciting when you consider we have the great negotiator showing up to that meeting, not a weak-kneed President Obama who ceded the power to Iran to get nuclear weapons in a decade.
Finally, we take a look at the cultural differences between President Trump and you referenced it's great to say former President Obama when you think about what he did to the country for 8 years.
It is. It's very nice to say former President Obama. And you look at just the deals that were made around the world with Iran, as I mentioned, allowing them to get nuclear weapons in 10 years, Paris Climate Accord entangling us in this global agreement where we're forced to reduce our emissions, but China gets to just, run freely. And TPP, a deal that hurt American workers. So every one of these deals was a bad deal. And thankfully, President Trump dismantled every one of the weak Obama deals. So it's pretty good thing to have President Trump in the White House and definitely over President Obama, no doubt.
Well, Kayleigh, we appreciate it. And this is a compliment, but it's always great to see a young lady up there fighting. And I remember you during the primary, and I'm going in the general, and I go, boy, who is this lady? She's got a lot of guts, and you do it with a smile, which is very tough to do. So thank you for joining us, and thank you for continuing to keep the message going strongly, ma'am.
Well, thank you so much. I appreciate it, Kevin.
All right, Kayleigh McEnany joining us. Kevin Miller in the morning at KIDO Talk Radio. What a nice young lady who goes there and really makes a difference. By the way, Ray Amaya, you're right about that. Thank you for reminding me. Today's Kevin Miller cash code word is swing. Swing, swing, swing. Your chance to win up to $5,000. That's a lot of money. Boy, that would be nice if we were eligible. What you do is you go to KIDOTalkRadio.com, look at Win K Millie's Cash, type in the words. The more words you get, the greater your chances are to win up to $5,000. And you can listen at 6:05, 8:05, and 3:05 during the Sean Hannity Experience. Do we need a special session?
The water that flows in the Boise River and in our irrigation canals comes from 3 dams, Anderson Ranch, Arrow Rock, and Lucky Peak. It's a delicate balancing act for the Bureau of Reclamation when flooding is a threat. Its purpose is to control it, which, as we saw last spring, isn't always easy to do. There are also contracts with the Bureau of Reclamation for water from our reservoir system. Most farmers and some subdivisions depend on it. When there is an early release during a high water year, that water is counted toward the contracted allotment, but is typically not being used in March or April.
I mean, the water interests in the Treasure Valley have been struggling with this issue for 10 years or more.
Speaker of the House Scott Bedke says that's why this day inside the Lincoln Auditorium is historic. Water interests have agreed on creating more storage as a solution, and lawmakers on the Interim Natural Resources Committee and Standing Senate and House Resources Committees voted unanimously to ask the governor for a special session focused on the issue of water rights.
They've come together with a way that can work. Now, there's going to be second guessing here. Well, do we really need to do it that way? We could do it this way, and that's just human nature at this point.
And there certainly are questions on this Boise Basin-focused legislation. Senate Minority Leader Michelle Stennett says a special session will allow everyone to ask those questions.
It probably would benefit us to be able to have a thorough vetting of it, have more public input, and then be better prepared to make a change in legislation on water, which is always a very contentious thing to do without people's understanding.
Only the governor can call for a special session, and if he does, he will set the date. Holding a special session will cost the state money, but Representative Mike Moyle said today it could cost more money if nothing is done.
And that is the National Murrow Award winner, Tammy Tremblay from Channel 7. That's the most prestigious award you can get in journalism, and certainly want to acknowledge her and her fine work. And we love our news partners at Channel 7. Phone number is 580-5436, 580-KIDO. This is something that we've been covering for about 5 years now, just the finite water resources. And if you're new to the Treasure Valley, if you're new to Idaho, we're a desert. We're a mountain desert, literally. That's why it never rains, except Larry allegedly said it's going to rain on Saturday. However, The real key is, you know how we have these beautiful lawns, and we want to keep our lawns beautiful. But if all of a sudden senior water rights holders do not get the water that they need, and there's been talk of, was that about 5 years ago, where you weren't allowed to water every day? Now, you might not think that's a big deal, but yes, water is a finite resource. The beauty of Idaho is the irrigation system that has allowed us to live in this, 1,000 years ago, 100 years ago, would be an unlivable place. But you've got to preserve it. You've got to build the infrastructure. Now, again, do you really need a special session? 580-5436, 580-KIDO. And this is what comes down to the building and the growth and your home valuations. If you have no water, you have no home. I'll address that next. What we call this is wake up to the alarmist. No, just kidding. But it's something that needs to be looked at. Water rights, water resources, and really what's next. Hopefully we'll find out that before 6:30. You're listening to Kevin Miller on KIDO Talk Radio.
Samantha Bee returned to her TBS show Full Frontal last night, starting with another apology for using a crude word to describe Ivanka Trump, but says she also expressed anger that the controversy distracted from more important issues.
I hate that I did something to contribute to the nightmare of 24-hour news cycles that we're all white-knuckling through. I should have known that a potty-mouthed insult would be inherently more interesting to them than juvenile immigration policy.
Bee called the president's daughter a vulgar term last week on her show, saying Trump should speak to her father about changing a policy where children of people entering the country illegally are being detained. In New York City, Tanya J. Powers, Fox News.
And it's 6:24, Kevin Miller in the morning on 580 AM, 107.5 FM, KIDO Talk Radio. Samantha Bee, by the way, if you want to talk about water, finite water rights, impact fees, 580-5436, 580-KIDO. We'd love to get your thoughts on that. I have a few of my own that I'll share coming up. But this has to be one of the top cultural stories of the day. And as I've said, whether it's LeBron James, who I think personally does a lot of goodwill and good work with the charitable communities, I disagree with basically everything he's talking about politically. When he calls the president a bum and says nobody wants to go to the White House, well, I think you're wrong about that, sir. But in America, we can agree to disagree. Now, here you have Samantha Bee, who I don't know her. I didn't know the comedian at the White House Press Association. Didn't know any of these people. They're nobodies, right? On some no-name network that used to run cartoons all the time and Saturday Night Wrestling. So she gets up there, and you hear the anger in her voice. Look, you're paid as a comedian to make us laugh. Now, if you want to look things and put things in the proper perspective and step up to do political commentary, then I think that Samantha Bee should make a run at joining liberal CNN, liberal MSNBC, or something like that. But if you're paid to be a ha-ha, we want ha-has. It's like tuning into this station and you're getting country and Western music. Oh, I know it's country music, but you know what I'm saying. There's an expectation. And whether it's Bruce Springsteen or LeBron James or Samantha Bee, enough of the shenanigans. And by the way, she was not repentant last night because she said she just didn't care and had some issues with popular conservative righteous men.
I want this show to be challenging and I want it to be honest, but I never intended it to hurt anyone except Ted Cruz.
See, and that's the non-apology. She knew what she was doing. As Lars Larson and I were talking about on Monday, that is the most vulgar term, the most disrespectful term that you can use when you're talking to a female. And here you have her saying, well, I didn't want. She knew what she was doing. The executives knew what they were doing. Imagine again if it were conservative. Roseanne, boot, because she tweeted something inappropriate. Samantha Bee is hailed as a hero, and this is why the president is so popular. 627, more on that in a minute. Kevin Miller on 580 AM, 107.5 FM. Traffic and weather, 627. Kevin Miller, full transparency here on 580 AM, 107.5 FM. So back to this point about Samantha Bee at 580-5436, 580-KIDO. It really wasn't an apology. It was a slap at conservative, traditional, God-fearing America.
Many men were also offended by my use of the word. I do not care about that.
Right. Again, this is the righteousness. This is the condescension. This is the double standard. And in reality, you're paid to be a ha-ha. Now, I don't know if Conan, who at one time was a pretty hot comedian, Conan, you remember the redheaded, not Carrot Top. No, not Carrot Top. Conan. Well, he used to be on NBC, and then he got mad. That's the problem with people in radio and TV. They get mad. You know, life is good, and perception is reality. You look at these guys and go, well, he's making millions of dollars. Why would he get mad? Well, they took away the Tonight Show. Okay, but he's mad. Maybe he should have stuck around and got the Tonight Show back. I don't know. Anyway, look at like happy Jimmy Kimmel. He just frolics around and dances over rainbows and unicorns. My point is that Conan stays out of the politics, I believe. Jay Leno stays out of the politics, I believe. But these other, Jimmy Kimmel stays out of the, Fish Face stays out of the politics. But these, all of a sudden, they start believing their hype. And this woman should be suspended at the very least, right? To say that about the first daughter, to say that about anyone, and then to be unrepentant? Come on, Samantha Bee.
I'm really sorry that I said that word, but you know what? Civility is just nice words. Maybe we should all worry a little bit more about the niceness of our actions.
Right, and, again, she's a social justice warrior. Why is she a social justice warrior? Because we're trying to stop the curb of the illegals coming in. And the illegals use the loophole. They send kids here unaccompanied. Now, again, if you're a parent, are you, and here I'm calling them out, and you love your child that either you gave birth to, you adopted, you're the guardian, you've got an awesome responsibility, a humbling responsibility. Who in their right mind, if they loved their kid, if they truly loved their kid, would do this? Would let their kid run amok all the way up to America as a means of getting into the country? That's not love, is it? We'll talk about it next. You're listening to Kevin Miller on 580 AM, 107.5 FM.
Jennifer Sutcliffe says she and her husband were out doing some yard work when she spotted a 4-foot-long rattler. Her husband grabbed a shovel and lopped off the snake's head. But when he bent down to pick up the pieces, the snake's disembodied head bit him. Almost immediately, the man began suffering seizures and vision loss. He was airlifted to a hospital where he needed dozens of doses of an anti-venom. He's recovering now, but may have kidney damage. Jack Callahan, Fox News.
Kevin Miller in the morning here at KIDO Talk Radio. Just, again, by the way, the forecast today from the Channel 7 First Alert Weather Center. Highs today in the, mid to upper 80s. Looks like Saturday there's going to be some storms. We'll keep you updated on that as we move along. Thank you all for joining us. Phone numbers here, 580-5436, 580-KIDO. Again, the forecast, that's where we're at here on KIDO Talk Radio. Let's take a look at, what's going on in Washington, D.C. Our great friend Rachel Sutherland joining us from Fox News Radio. Rachel, good morning.
Hey, good morning, Kevin.
Good to have you with us here at KIDO Talk Radio. So, the president's pardoning people, and the soon-to-be retired Speaker of the House says, you shouldn't pardon yourself, Mr. President.
Yeah, he didn't really go into whether or not the president could pardon himself, but House Speaker Paul Ryan is saying the president shouldn't, that no one is above the law. He was taking questions from reporters. He also said that he agreed with Congressman Trey Gowdy's assessment of the situation when it comes to what the FBI did during the 2016 campaign. Gowdy is just one of a few lawmakers who have seen these classified documents related to the president's Spygate, the idea that maybe an informant or somebody was in the campaign. Gowdy has said that he believed the FBI did what the American people would want them to do, and also, so Speaker Ryan agrees. And then later in the day, Richard Burr, Republican who chairs the Senate Intelligence Committee, told CNN that he also agrees with Gowdy's assessment. So you do see some Republicans sort of breaking with the president on this, but they're not saying, hey, President Trump cut the Spygate stuff out or anything. They're just saying that they don't think it was a quote-unquote spy.
And you have the administration sticking to their guns, Sarah Huckabee Sanders and others, whether it's on media appearances or during the White House press briefing. But, Rachel, you could almost see this as some type of weird Saturday Night Live bit going crazy where you could have the president pardoning himself. But
well,
if it weren't true.
You talk about pardons, then you have to talk about indictments. There's no reason to talk about a pardon unless there's going to be an indictment, and then there's this ongoing discussion as to whether or not a sitting U.S. president can be indicted. Justice Department memos, more than one, I believe, has said no, but it has not been tried in court. And that's when you're facing really something the United States has never seen before. And that's where you get people talking about things like constitutional crises, stuff like that. But I think that's getting way out ahead because we're not even talking about an indictment. And in fact, it doesn't appear that Robert Mueller would be seeking one.
Well, and then you've got the idea of this new report coming out about James Comey defying authority as the director. You've got the possibility of Martha Stewart and Blagojevich being pardoned. Again, this is almost like the summer season, but it's not fiction; it's reality of the Celebrity Apprentice.
Exactly. Oh, one would wonder if this isn't the biggest reality show that the country has ever seen. But yeah, these ideas of pardons coming out, and Martha Stewart, as you mentioned, Rod Blagojevich. Last week it was Dinesh D'Souza and some others. The president seems to be on this kind of kick of this. He may get on to something else. He's got the summit coming up now. What is it? Just days away. In fact, I believe John Decker, my colleague, is going to be going. So the bag's got to be packed and travel needs to begin because it takes a long time to get to Singapore.
Well, it's like that song, Big Old Jet Airliner, it seems. Has the culture of Washington changed? With each administration, maybe Washington takes on a little of that administration. Have you noticed a change with the Trumps in the White House at all?
I've noticed a change in the way that the White House is covered from the Obama administration and the Trump administration, and even from the perspective of the fact that reporters, I think, are rather run ragged. It takes, forgive me, but a village to cover this presidency. The president is up at all hours tweeting. It's a different feeling from the Obama administration when there was a kind of an orderly expectation of how the day would go. In this case, there's no way to predict any single day, and that's fine and well. It's just a different way of doing things, and it takes really just teams and teams of reporters to keep up on what comes out of Washington on a daily basis, even weekends. There's no breaks.
Yes, all you have to do is have your Twitter notifications tied to the president. You understand that he's very active. Gone are the days of the Josh Earnest press conferences.
Right, when we would be bored to death. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, even my son, who's 14, follows President Trump on Twitter, so he gets the updates too.
Yeah, no, like I said, and I had the opportunity, thanks to John, to sit in on one of those, and he had such just a Zen-like mastery of the room. Very different today, and taking nothing away from Sarah Sanders, it's just a different vibe.
Oh, completely. And I think that we're starting to get used to it as reporters and as the American public, starting to get used to a bit of the chaos. But if you compare what it was, 4 years ago and the quietness of the White House and, having worked over there from time to time, you knew what to expect. It was this daily flow. And every day the press briefing would be about the same time. And then it would be followed by a State Department briefing. I mean, it was just this easy, slow flow of information. This is a White House that has a lot to say all around the clock. And so as reporters, it's totally fascinating. And I would imagine that in the days after President Trump leaves office, whether it be 2 years from now or 6, we will all of a sudden, maybe we'll be bored. What happened? Remember when we thought that Chris Christie would be a colorful candidate?
Oh my gosh. He's doing a fairly decent job as an analyst on ABC, though.
I haven't seen him over there. I'll need to check that out.
Well, because, Rachel, you have a life and you get away from this silliness occasionally.
I try to. Sometimes it's healthy, Kevin.
Yes, it is. Yes, it is.
You should, turn off your phone for a day and just go out with nature.
Yes. Well, Rachel, thank you very much.
Thanks.
All right, Rachel Sutherland joining us. What a nice young lady. Kevin Miller in the morning here at KIDO Talk Radio. Taking a look at the forecast today. Chance of afternoon showers. High today, 85. Tomorrow, 88. Saturday, cooling off at about 77, and Sunday, 65. But anyway, currently it is 6:42. Kevin Miller in the morning. Phone numbers 580-5436, 580-KIDO. And you ever wonder what's going to happen to the Girl Scouts? Remember the Scouts? The Boy Scouts are getting rid of the term boy. Can you imagine? You know, D-Day was yesterday. Could you imagine in the world of Ellen DeGeneres, Ryan Seacrest, and gosh knows who else, in the era where everybody's happy, bubbly, and rainbows and unicorns and everything else, that if you would say to the greatest generation, hey, I just want to let you know, we're getting rid of the Boy Scouts. Now, what's next for the Girl Scouts, since you're going to have Girl Scouts becoming Boy Scouts?
As the Boy Scouts of America gets ready to change its name to just Scouts BSA and welcomes girls, the Girl Scouts of the USA is saying,
we are keeping the girl in Girl Scouts, and that's going to be our focus. It's been our focus for over 100 years.
Sylvia Acevedo, CEO of the Girl Scouts of the USA, says with her group, girls get the chance to do things themselves instead of in a mixed group where boys often dominate.
Like science, like, computer, like robotics. You don't always get called on.
The Girl Scouts trying to recruit members by creating lots of new badges young girls can earn in things like entertainment technology, roller coaster design, even screenwriting. Jill Nato, Fox News.
Right. Well, isn't that the reason why you have the Boy Scouts and the Girl Scouts, but we're getting rid of that? But she should take a look at, Jill Nato should take a look at that report. That seems sexist, that boys dominate girls. Cindy Caldwell, good morning. You're on KIDO Talk Radio. Hello, Cindy.
Well, good morning, Kevin. Thank you for having the person on talking about water and the reclamation program in Idaho. One thing, when I came here, I just found the beauty, especially in the Sunny Slope area. It's rather like Tuscany in Italy, that I just find it incredibly beautiful. So thanks on a good note, but I would just like to respond to something your reporter said. You know what? I'm not, when you speak about the 8 years of Barack Hussein, people sat there because they were so oppressed and I would say outright, some of them more fearful of saying anything, rather like a frog being boiled in water. Because if you said one word, if what's Samantha or LeBron, if you use the vitriolic, actually just despicable words from these narcissistic, spoiled, self-centered people, that can you just imagine calling the president something like, he had a white mother. He was mulatto. I had a black pastor for 3 years. He wasn't, I have no idea where his brother still is in Africa, but if any of the words or the thoughts were expressed, you probably end up somewhere down in some, tracked by the FBI. So I don't think reporters, I saw a movie yesterday. It's called We Were Soldiers, and it's on Vietnam. And it's actually about
Mel Gibson.
Oh, yes. And Sam Elliott. Oh, I love everything Sam Elliott. But, the tragedy in that.
Sam Elliott's no Tea Party Bob.
No, but Sam Elliott is, well, I'll just leave it at that. I like Sam Elliott. But the bottom line is, okay. I sure do. Anyway, in that movie, you see a group of reporters. I have not much respect anymore for true reporters. There's one journalist who got into the fire battle with them, and this was a true story. And then you see all the others coming off the plane. So my respect for journalists and politicians is sort of just not there anymore. But the reality is, when I think about these people, last night, I don't know what possessed me, but, I was thinking about eagles, this symbol of our nation, and that ridiculous, I just see those people as battering rams, really chasing around a little, getting paid all that money, a little old leather ball, and then having the audacity when next week is Flag Day, to do what they do, the only thing I kept thinking of, and I actually went and looked it up, I mean, I would change the name of that team to something like Crows, Vultures. You know, they're just absolutely despicable. I have absolutely no respect for them. To think, somebody go watch We Were Soldiers. These are men that have given their lives to protect this nation. They do nothing. And if I was the president, frankly, I would I would redo the draft. You got to grow these Americans up. They are nothing but a bunch of narcissists. So, great movie out there. And I really do think names do matter. Despicable that you would call the president. There's absolutely no respect. And that comes from the second, the last 5 commandments in the 10 commandments are how in public behavior, the arena of ideas, we are to behave. And now we're just in a guttural pool of cultural rot. So I would rename the Eagles something like, there is such a thing as a black turkey vulture. And I was thinking, isn't that just like them? They don't deserve the proud name for the eagle. They deserve something along that line, and there's many of them. So that's my take for the day. Names do matter, words do matter, and I would they're all complaining at one time about, we can't have the Redskins. Give me a break. God makes different colors of people. It's beautiful. But you know what? That's what you're acting like. So that's my thought for the day, Kevin. You keep pressing on, and hopefully you'll do something as wonderful as you did about D-Day for Flag Day next week.
Cindy, thank you.
You're welcome. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. 580-5436, 580-KIDO. Doug in Mountain Home with Kevin Miller. Good morning, Doug.
Yeah. I always wanted to talk about Boy Scouts, Girl Scouts, women. I mean, just like, and don't get me wrong, Kevin, I ain't trying not to say nothing bad about women. I mean, but I don't get why so many people or so many women, I don't know, are getting predominant jobs over men in this society. How am I wanting to say this? And I'm not saying, I'm not the smartest freaking tool in the shed, but man, I'm just not no good at this. But I know the way they've been beating down the young white males in this country, this leftist has. It's taking the word boy out of Boy Scouts. If they had their way, Kevin, I've always felt this way since it's been coming. They would have boys wearing a pink dress, and they'd be going to the bathroom just like a woman. It's just like, it is absolutely stupid. And I know God is watching this and going, what are you doing, nation? Putting women in front of men. I don't get it. I really do not get this movement whatsoever that men are letting this happen. The other thing is, Kevin, I read a lot because I don't have TV. You wouldn't know it by the way I talk because I can't talk. But I read, I'm sure you get on the internet, you check things out, and I can't remember. There's a prayer walker by the name of Henry Groover. I've met him at a little church in Kalispell. He's from back east Kansas somewhere, and he has been all over the world, Kevin, praying, doing prayers for God. He is so in tune with the Holy Spirit, it's unbelievable. But I'm pretty sure it was one of his little books I read, and you should be able to find this on the internet, but our first president, George Washington, had a vision and a visit of an angel during the Revolutionary War, and it has been passed down through history by an aide that was with him all the time through his family. And it is really interesting, this colored vision that the Lord gave him about the United States. And the very last part of it was about women being in control. And it was not good, Kevin. So look it up. And you women out there, I'm not trying to beat you up. And it sounds like I am, but I'm not. But you just need, they need to be helping, and I'm not saying they're not, I don't know. They need to be helping the men in this country because the left isn't. Conservative women need to be helping their men in this country, and that's all I've got to say, Kevin, and I'm sorry I don't talk good.
Doug,
Keep
you
up
talk
the good work.
You talk good enough for me. Thank you, brother.
Yeah, bye.
Bye-bye. Much more coming up. Kevin Miller in the morning. You're listening to 580 AM 107.5 FM KIDO Talk Radio. And I'm Kevin Miller on your home for Fox News on the radio. Don't forget, coming up, more of your phone calls on the Boy Scouts, water rights, and, of course, the issues that matter to you. Wake up on the right side with me, Kevin Miller, weekdays, 580 AM 107.5 FM.